Zippis, and I am representing the permit applicant, Synagro. I want to start off and say that Synagro is a proud member of the BBC and does participate in the Code of Good Practice, in addition to its regulatory requirements under the law. The use of biosolids on farm sites does increase organic matter, improves soil tilth, improves crop yield, microorganisms, water infiltration, and other benefits. Many of these topics were briefly touched upon in the opening statements by Neil, so I won't repeat them in specificity. Also was mentioned that the use of biosolids on farms is an important agronomic practice. It is an effective fertilizer that helps improve crop yields, which does help to maintain open spaces in rural communities and provides important jobs to the local economy, local rural economies. It was covered, this permit application, the dates when it was submitted and review procedures, which we participated in along the way. I did notice that some references were made in the opening talk to property values in Pennsylvania, and I would like to offer that a study was undertaken by Pennsylvania State University on real estate values in Pennsylvania, and they found that biosolids do not negatively impact property values. They found other factors, which was mostly location to consumer services and not with farming. But in general, open land contributes to increases in property value. I'd be happy if the board wants to provide a copy of that study. The sources that would be used in this application are all approved separately by the DEQ for land application. And the crops involved in this permit application are almost entirely pasture land and hay. And that sort of concludes my remarks. I wanted to thank you for your time and your review and consideration.
Responses from section 1 in the responses that you all have in your packets. Protection of human health and the environment, the DEQ states, quote, research into the safety and use of biosolids, since this is not working, if that's all right, see better. Research into the safety and use of biosolids as an agricultural amendment is ongoing. They are referring to EPA evaluations which are ongoing, and specifically to HJ 120 passed in the General Assembly in 2016 for a 2-year study by JLARC to be completed by October of this year. The JLARC study is reviewing current scientific literature on impacts of biosolids on health, impacts on wells, surface and groundwater, and evaluating the regulatory requirements for land application and storage of biosolids. The next sentence is astonishing to me, saying, until there is new relevant research to conclude otherwise, DEQ is confident that the VPA regulations and permits are protective of human health and the environment. We disagree that DEQ should feel confident. On behalf of myself and many people I've spoken with, we respectfully request that no permit be issued until the JLARC study is completed. The reopener clause mentioned in the DEQ's response would not suffice, as how would the biosolids be removed from a field once applied? And number 2, the outdated 25-year, 24-hour storm regulation has not been addressed. There are scientific studies and reports on the climate, on changing climate and the alterations in the jet stream. This causes weather to stall, prolonging heavy rains or prolonging droughts, which we presently observe around the world and here in Virginia. As a result, the biosolid application, if caught in a heavy, prolonged storm, will wash into streams, people's drinking water wells, and into neighbors' fields. Number 3, there was insufficient response regarding growing agricultural products for the consumption or market. Pollutants travel by water and also by air, covering the crops. Any toxins will contaminate organic products, rendering them unusable. This puts organic farmers at risk of losing their livelihood. In addition to organics, the question remains as how healthy are all crops and farm animals. Harm to wildlife is another insufficiently answered question. Number 4, on the topic of human health risks, I spoke with one adjacent landowner in Nelson County who is recovering from a lung operation. Some people are more susceptible to illness, but how can a person truly know in advance who will get sick? A few conscientious landowners in Nelson County have withdrawn their permits. One lady pulled their 400 plus acres after reading the Synagro contract and doing some research. The contract specified a 1-year delay for public use. I'm almost done. The public, she realized, included herself, her children, grandchildren, and neighbors, and she could not take that risk. The question of odors is not sufficiently addressed. Odors serve as a warning, indicating the material contains disease-causing pathogens and biological toxins or endotoxins, which can be ingested or inhaled and interfere with the body's natural defense mechanisms. Peer-reviewed scientific studies have shown that the health effects are not imagined but real. And last, we have asked Governor McAuliffe to put a stay on issuing further permits to apply biosolids until at least the JLARC study is final and the Commission's recommendations are presented. It is our request that you postpone any decisions on the Nelson County permit. Thank you.
Speak about the difference between Class A and Class B. And I was going to go and do my usual, if you remember my story about the Class A is the turkey that you serve your relatives on Thanksgiving that's been fully cooked, and Class B is a half-cooked turkey that you put on the table and everybody gets sick from. But let me go back to something that Neil brought up on his staff response. And he separated out conveniently the equal protection under the law, under the 14th Amendment, which I've spoken of before, and the difference between, and then earlier he spoke about urban and rural. And he said, when he was speaking about urban versus rural, that it could be put on urban areas. But it's not, is it, Neil? And it never has been. And because he said something about access restrictions. The fact is that rural people are being denied their constitutional rights because there's not many of us. And you're hoping we'll just go away. And the truth is that Class B biosolids are a toxic material. It's completely different. Class A is bagged up and sold in garden centers. And the reason they don't do that with Class B is because it's a toxic material. And I've never, somebody refresh my memory, but the last time I read the Constitution, it doesn't say equal protection under the law unless you're a rural person and there's not many of you. It says it's for everybody. And so when Neil stands up here and with all due respect, he's representing the Commonwealth of Virginia, who is supposed to be giving us equal protection under the law. It doesn't matter how many of us there are. It doesn't matter. We have churches and schools. We have houses like anybody else. And those fields are not restricted at all. Our pets can go across them. Only a little sign, biosolids. Well, how many of our pets, cats and dogs, can read? How about illiterate people? How about children? And I'm asking you to please modify this permit, which is under your power. This is within your power to modify the permit to read only Class A can be land applied. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Eleanor Amidon. I live in Nelson County. I belong to a local citizen group called Protect Our Waters. We are very concerned about protecting the quality of the water in the county. By that I mean well water, as most of us have private wells, surface water, as many of us have agricultural businesses, groundwater, which is tapped by local breweries and wineries, and all the water that flows downstream into streams and rivers, affecting their potential for fishing and recreation, and possibly impacting anyone who lives downstream. Farmers are given the sewage sludge free of charge to be used as a fertilizer because of its high nutrient content that helps their crops grow. They aren't told that the sludge also contains viruses, parasites, heavy metals, pharmaceutical drugs, steroids, disinfectants, leachate from landfills, among many other toxic contaminants. Even as a fertilizer, there is no standardized or consistent rates of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. DEQ should require regulatory limits for phosphorus levels in sludge as a non-point source of pollution to surface waters. Approximately 50,000 chemicals are used today in the United States. Only about 200 of them have ever been tested for their effects on human health. Sewage sludge may contain many of these chemicals because the sludge is not tested for them. We don't know but because the sludge is not tested for them, we don't know its potential risks. The only way to find out what's in sewage sludge is to test it, both at its source and at its destination. Once we know what's in it and what's reacting in it as it travels and ages, we will be able to devise ways to treat it to remove harmful chemicals and toxins. Until we know what's in it, I would urge caution. We need better enforcement of existing regulations and greater oversight by local governments. At this point, we know relatively little about the chemicals and toxins in sewage sludge, and yet farmers can have it spread on their land. To protect future owners of that land, DEQ should require that full disclosure of sludge applications be recorded on titles or deeds for land where sewage sludge has been applied. The 2016 Virginia General Assembly passed H.J. 120, which directed the Joint Legislative and Audit and Review Commission, JLAR, to analyze the current scientific literature regarding the long-term effects of biosolids and industrial residues on health, including potential impacts on well, surface, and groundwater, and evaluate the regulatory requirements for land application and storage. The JLAR study is a 2-year study that will be over in October of this year. We ask that you hold off on approving any more permits until after we have the results of this study. We request that Synagro's permit application be denied.
And I also live in Nelson County. I've seen the scientific studies that say this application process is safe. I have also seen the studies that say it is not. I'm a retired teacher, not a scientist, and I cannot evaluate them. Virginia legislature has, in light of the confusing information and misinformation about land application of biosolids, requested the JLAR study. That report, as we know, is due later this year, and like everybody else, I'm asking that the decision for this permit be postponed until that study is available. At the public hearing in Lovingston last winter, I raised the concern about the required difference in setbacks between waterways and other public land access. The fact, the response being that exposure is less frequent and less duration along the streams. One way or another, all of the Nelson sites are in the James River watershed. Runoff of toxic substances from multiple sources ends up possibly concentrated in a river used by many, not just for boating, but for swimming and tubing. Many of us Nelsonians use our rivers repeatedly and for long, lazy summer days. Witness my recent sunburn from yesterday. Boaters are particularly attracted to the rivers after a heavy rain
when the runoff is the highest and the rapids most fun and most apt to land the boaters in the river. As a Nelson resident, I want to raise specific concerns about two sites. One is the NE06 site southeast of Piney River. That site is directly across the river from the Blue Ridge Railway Trail. I am president of the board of the Trail Foundation for that trail. The trail is flat and has minimal elevation change. That makes it popular with both young children on bikes and older residents who are often frail or in poor health. My other specific concern is about the large site in Wingina, also designated NE06. Not only is it right on the James River, raising concerns about runoff, it is also in the vicinity of the proposed Atlantic Coast pipeline crossing of the river. If the pipeline is approved, construction will entail heavy equipment, trenching, and possible blasting in the area. I have seen no analysis of the interaction of these two projects. Finally, a whimsical note. I remember from the Lovingston hearing that cattle for human consumption are banned from treated fields for a period of time. I would like to meet and shake the hands of a local farmer who can keep off the deer, many of whom are also destined for human consumption. Again, I ask that these permits not be issued prior to the results of the JLOC study. And I would also like to add very briefly in response to your question about tomatoes and cucumbers and that being raised in Nelson County, that there is a thriving organic farming community in Nelson County. Obviously, they're not applying for the permits for this, but they are raising that kind of crops and selling them at our local farm markets.
My name is Laura Laney Sullivan. I'm a resident of the city of Richmond. I care about this because it's part of the James Water watershed, or James River watershed, which is our drinking source. And I'd just like to encourage you to honor what all of the Nelson County residents requested, which is to wait until JLARC is finished. It's only a few months. And I just would like to remind you that about the last experience I had here was a year ago with the coal ash permits for Bremo, which I feel like I don't understand why that permit was approved, and then we all had to take to the streets because it wasn't protective of human health, and the 8 miles of James River were going to be extremely toxified through that permit. And then in the end, the James River Association and Dominion had to work out a better, more protective deal to protect the river. And so,
would you stick to the issue at hand, please?
yeah, I just want to put it into some context. So I want to encourage you, we all know that the EPA right now is not going to be so protective under the current administration. You are our administration that's protecting our state's waters, and we really need you to step it up and act on behalf of protecting the people, because we don't really know how things are going to go, and we need to just go step by step and protect our communities one by one, especially when they're asking to be protected. So please wait until the JLARC is finished.
Thank you.
Thank the Swiss French for that. My name is Heidi Didier too. My home is downwind and downstream from one of the targeted lands for sludge. I'm right on the James River where I like to swim, and I also garden organically. I'd like to read to you from a letter to the DEQ sent by a Nelson County landowner who was not able to be here today. Excerpts from that. After researching the land application of Class B biosolids, my family has recently withdrawn our land from the program because of the following issues. 1, our contract with Synagro states that access by the public to land on which Class B biosolids has been applied must be denied for 1 year. I realized that the public was me, my family, my children and grandchildren, and my neighbors. The Synagro contract was essentially stating that the material they put down is dangerous. 2, Class B biosolids contain pathogens such as fecal coliform bacteria, prions, heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, radioactive materials, flame retardants, etc., etc. 80,000 chemicals, I believe, instead of the modest 50,000 that Eleanor mentioned, that we have subjected to all of us. An industry organization, the Mid-Atlantic Biosolids Association, states in their publication Assessing Biosolids Pathogens, with biosolids emerging in prominence as world health issues and with failures of municipal utility management causing people serious harm, how can we in biosolids not pause to revisit our own responsibility for ensuring public health? 3, the EPA recognizes a new class of materials, nanomaterials, as emerging contaminants. An emerging contaminant is characterized by a perceived, potential, or real threat to human health or the environment, or a lack of published health standards. According to the EPA, a lack of environmental health and safety data regarding nanomaterials is cause for growing concern. 4, the National Academy of Science states that soybeans are susceptible to food quality and soil fertility interruption when grown in an environment with manufactured nanomaterials. Soybeans' ability to fix nitrogen was found to be impaired in plants grown in contact with 2 common manufactured nanomaterials. 5, the government only requires testing for 9 of the many more heavy metals found in sludge. It does not require testing for organic pollutants. Heavy metals, pharmaceuticals, bacteria are only some of the things that can find their way into our wells, gardens, streams, and rivers. They will be tracked into our houses and blown onto our dining room tables and on the wind, and also taken back into the cities via all of the food that we all eat. Frankly, I just don't think we have enough hard data to prove that Class B biosolids are truly safe. And you cannot walk them back after application. Biosolids are forever. So of course, I asked you to please deny this permit. And why would you approve a permit like this prior to the results of the JLARC study? Almost finished. Does not the fact that the General Assembly directed this study indicate there's risk involved with the application of sewage sludge? And my addition, if we had single-payer health care, I believe that sludge applications would be stopped. There would no longer be conflict of